Hi. For today's daily inspiration, I am going to share with you the story of the Golem of Prague. It's more or less an adult story, no pictures today. I do think kids will enjoy the story as well, but it is an adult story. There are many variations of this particular story, and stories about golems in general abound in Jewish folklore. I will share a simple version of the Golem of Prague that I found on the internet. This tale appealed to me because the Temple Book Group has read 2 books about golems. One of our very first books was The Golem and the Jinni by Helene Wecker, and more recently we read The World That We Knew by Alice Hoffman. We enjoyed both of them very much and recommend them. And we found it quite interesting to compare the 2 different golems created by 2 different novelists. What's particularly fascinating is that in Jewish folklore, golems are usually male, and both of these authors imagined female golems, so it was fun to compare the 2 different female characters who were golems. So here's the story of the Golem of Prague. Long ago, Prague was a city of mystery. It was a city of narrow streets and broad desires. It was a city of money, magic, and murder. It was also a city filled with hatred. During this time, the late 16th century, the Jews of Prague lived in the ghetto and were attacked from all sides. People spread lies about the Jews. They said that the Jews did magic, that they attacked Christian children, that they used the blood of Christian babies to bake matzah, that they went into churches at night and destroyed the holy body of Christ. The Jews of Prague were poor, and still people came and threw rocks at their houses, shouted names at them in the street, and refused to sell things to them. The leader of the Jews of Prague, Rabbi Yehuda Lowe, known as the Maharal, which is an abbreviation for Moreno Harav Lowe, which means our teacher, Rabbi Lowe, observed what was going on in Prague with great sadness. His people had been expelled from Provence, from Naples, from many other places. Rudolph II, the Holy Roman Emperor, did not have good relations with the Jews of Prague, and the rabbi feared that soon they would be expelled from Prague too. One day, Rabbi Lowe sat on the banks of the river Vltava. Lately, he was very busy. He had much work praying, writing, and helping others, and he had no assistants to help him. In truth, many people were afraid of the rabbi. He was educated, wise, and kind, but he was also a great scientist. He did wonderful experiments in chemistry and biology, and for those who didn't understand this, it was frightening. They called him a magician and kept away from him. Rabbi Lowe sat on the riverbank and stared at the towers of the city and thought. He needed to protect his people, but he could not do it alone. He watched a child playing by the river, making a castle of the clay. If they think I am a magician, he said to himself, why could I not simply make my own assistant, one who will accompany me in prayer and in battle? So he collected clay from the banks of the river and went to work. For many weeks, he struggled to create a man out of clay. Inside, there were complicated mechanics like the insides of a clock, but the figure would not move. He didn't have life. The rabbi thought, and finally came up with a solution. In the quiet of the night, he wrote one of the holy names of God on a piece of paper. It was a secret name that no one could pronounce. Then he rolled up the paper and put it into the creature's mouth. Slowly, the creature sat up and began to walk. It moved slowly and awkwardly, like a toddler, and almost walked out of the window. The rabbi jumped and took the paper from its mouth and it went still again. "I have created my assistant," Rabbi Lowe said, "but I must be careful." He called it Golem, which means unfinished, because the creature was not a real human in God's eyes. Every day, the Golem helped the rabbi. It did daily tasks for him and was capable of carrying very heavy things and moving large furniture and burdens. Whenever people came to the ghetto to throw stones or shout names at the Jews, the Golem would come out, and they ran away in fear. Everyone was impressed by Rabbi Lowe's creation. The rabbi quickly learned how to control the Golem using his thoughts. He also learned that he had to take the paper out of its mouth every night before going to sleep, because otherwise it moved according to its own desires and did whatever it wanted. One Shabbat afternoon, the rabbi was teaching in the synagogue. The children of the community played outside while their parents studied with the Maharal. When they grew cold, they wandered over to the rabbi's house, not far from the synagogue, and saw the Golem through the window. They tapped on the glass, and the Golem looked at them. Some of them ran away in fear, but one brave child said, "Golem, we're cold. Can you make a fire for us?" The Golem jumped through the window, smashing the glass. It was made to follow orders, so it immediately got to work, picking up sticks and building a fire. Soon it had built a great bonfire in the middle of the street, and the children danced around it. "Golem, dance with us." Once more, the Golem had to follow orders. It danced with the children, and they laughed and sang. "Golem, make the fire bigger," said one of the children. So the Golem went and took chairs from the rabbi's house, breaking them into the fire. The fire grew and grew, and the children got scared and ran away. The fire spread to one of the buildings and then another. The Golem stood and watched because nobody told it to put the fire out. By the time the fire was put out, several houses had been destroyed. All that remained of the Golem was a burnt piece of paper from its mouth. Naturally, the council of the city was furious, and Rabbi Lowe was called before Emperor Rudolph II. Lowe felt a great fear on that day. He prayed and prayed because he was sure it was to be his last day on earth. He wanted to protect his people, and instead he had put them in danger. There was no doubt now that the emperor would expel the Jews from Prague. But when the rabbi went before the emperor was smiling. "I hear that in your religion it is a sin to make a living creature. How can you explain yourself?" "It was not a living creature," said the rabbi, "only a doll powered by the holy name in its mouth." "You are an interesting guy," said Rudolph. "You are too valuable to kill. You will be my prisoner, and while you're here, I want you to make another creature. You call it Golem, yes? Make another Golem for me. I have yet to see one with my own eyes, and it's hard to believe the stories. If indeed you are telling the truth and the creature serves me well, then I shall let you go free. If not, then you shall die, and your people will be expelled from Prague." The rabbi thanked the emperor for his kindness. He was placed in a simple but comfortable prison cell and immediately got to work. He built a Golem twice as large as the last, with huge strong arms and horrible red eyes that burned bright. When he was finished, the Golem and the rabbi were brought before the emperor. "As you can see, Your Majesty, this creature is simply made of clay, along with some mechanics. But watch what happens now." Lowe put the holy name inside the Golem's mouth, and it came to life. The Golem saluted the emperor. "Wonderful, Rabbi. I will make use of him." Rabbi Lowe shook his head. "I cannot give it to you. The holy name cannot go to a non-believer. It is too dangerous. The creature might not follow your orders and could cause great destruction." The emperor looked unhappy for a moment and then smiled again. He had a warm, friendly smile, even though he was an evil man. "I understand, Rabbi, but may I see the Golem in private for just a moment?" The rabbi hesitated. He was sure that the man was going to take the holy name from the golem's mouth, but equally, if he did not obey, he would likely be killed. Of course, the rabbi said. The emperor took the golem into another room for a few minutes, and let both it and the rabbi go free. The Maharal returned to the ghetto, and everyone was happy to see him. But when they saw the golem walking beside him, they ran away in fear, calling it a monster. Rabbi Lowe felt sad, as he knew his reputation as a magician would only grow. This time, though, he was very careful. Every Friday before the Sabbath began, he made sure to remove the holy name from the golem's mouth, so that it could rest like the rest of the Jews. The golem grew stronger and smarter every day and impressed the rabbi with its abilities. Slowly, the people of the ghetto came to trust it, and the rabbi was happy to lend a hand to help others as long as it was returned to him before sunset. But one day, the golem surprised the rabbi. It talked. "I want to be a soldier," it said. "Why?" said Lowe. "You can be a baker, a painter, a builder. Why would you want to be a soldier?" "I must fight for my master." "But I am your master, and I do not want you to be a soldier." The golem shook his head. "You are not my master. The emperor is my master, and I must fight for him." The rabbi shook with fear. "Be quiet," he shouted, and the golem stopped speaking. The rabbi took the holy name from the golem's mouth and sat down to think. The emperor had clearly done something to the creature, and now it presented a serious danger to him and his people. But he was close to making a scientific breakthrough with his experiments, and he needed the golem's help to operate the equipment. For a few days, he let the golem work and watched it carefully. It did not speak again, but it became dull and clumsy and was often slow to respond to orders. The rabbi wondered if he had indeed committed a sin by making the creature. But he was so accustomed to having the golem now that he could not imagine doing all the work by himself. After a few days, the golem seemed to behave normally again. It obeyed orders and never spoke another word. It seemed like its rebellious phase had ended, although it had picked up a strange habit. In the evening, it carried large lumps of clay around and piled them up outside the house. The rabbi thought this was odd, but it didn't bother him, so he ignored it. On a Friday afternoon, when the rabbi was preparing to go to the synagogue, he heard a crash in the street, and someone ran up to him and said, "Hurry, your monster is trying to get into the synagogue." The rabbi ran outside and shouted at the golem, "Stop, stop!" But the golem did not stop. It kept banging at the door to the synagogue. "What are you doing?" the rabbi cried. "I must destroy the holy law. It is inside the synagogue. When I destroy the holy law, you will not be able to control me, and I will create others like me. We must fight for our master. We must destroy the Jews of Prague." "Monster!" shouted the rabbi. He jumped up to move the holy name from the golem's mouth, but it batted him away, and he landed painfully on the ground. A crowd had formed around the golem now, and they pushed and pulled at it. The monster fought them and was able to keep many away, but a small child managed to climb up on its back, onto its shoulder, and pull the paper right from its mouth. The golem shook and then started breaking apart. It fell into lots of pieces on the ground. The crowd cheered, and Rabbi Lowe kneeled before them. "Forgive me. I did a most foolish thing and put all our lives at risk." "Do not apologize, Rabbi. You had your best intentions at heart, but we cannot rely on a golem to protect us. We must protect ourselves." They locked up the pieces of the golem in the attic of the synagogue, but stories of the golem live on. Rabbi Lowe is remembered to this day as the Maharal of Prague who created a golem. The end.